Dry, and dry is the theme as we head into the weekend, because here comes high pressure slowly ambling in from the Atlantic. Weather fronts will bring some patchy rain to western Scotland, but otherwise the dry weather is likely to continue into the early part of next week.
As the race for number 10 intensifies, we are giving you the chance to get to know our next Prime Minister. We've invited the two candidates to meet you, the GB News viewers, and let you put your questions to them. Head directly to gbnews.uk or send me your questions to questions@gbnews.uk. It all kicks off at 5 o'clock next Wednesday with Liz Truss on GB News, the People's Channel.
We are GB News.
We're right across this great nation.
On TV.
On radio.
On digital. Absolutely everywhere.
We don't talk down to you.
We embrace all voices with honest and civilised conversation.
We are not part of the establishment.
We're one of you.
And we're only getting started.
Join us on GB News,
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel. Hi there, it's Stephen and Anne.
At breakfast from 6 a.m, you'll always be caught up with everything you need to know, the latest headlines, opinions and debates.
We'll bring you the good news and the bad, but most of all, we're here for you.
Remember, send in your views and let us know what you would like us to talk about.
That's because we're your news channel. And every morning at 6 a.m, it's breakfast on GB News.
My name's Tom Harwood, and join me 9:30 a.m. every weekday for The Briefing, your one-stop shop for everything you need to know about what's going on in politics today.
I wonder if this is a deal that might need to be like the biscuits in this factory, twice baked.
Is there not an opportunity here to win out against the extremes?
Tom Harwood, GB News.
What are you going to do about it?
Things should have been done differently, and they certainly are being done differently.
Don't miss it. The Briefing with me, Tom Harwood, 9:30 Monday to Friday on GB News.
Where would you like to go?
Just take me to the studio, please, mate. You know where you're going. I've got a show to do. Friday Night Feast on GB News, 7 p.m. And it's like nothing you've ever seen before. We take a different angle on the week's biggest news stories. The viewers and listeners set me some absolutely mad challenges to do. We tried to rehome a rescue dog. And yes, there's some other wacky stuff in there as well. I feel like I could take on the world. Well, that's that. Friday Night Feast with me, Patrick Christie's, every Friday, 7 till 9 p.m. on GB News. Be there.
Good afternoon. It is 1 o'clock. Welcome to On the Money, where we focus on the UK's cost of living crisis, helping you to beat the squeeze. I'm Nana Akwe. I'm in for Liam this Wednesday. And for the next hour, we'll be talking about a whole host of subjects with people who really know their stuff. From Liz Truss abandoning, no, she does know her stuff, abandoning a flagship policy to slashing billions of regional public sector pay, to energy giant BP recording record high profits when most of the UK are hit with some of the highest bills on record. It's an unstable time for Britain, and even our beloved nightclubs are struggling, with 1 in 5 of them closing down. More on that later, but first it's time for the GB News headlines.
Thanks, Nana. It's just gone 1 o'clock. I'm Simon Pusey in the GB newsroom. Fears over security have delayed ballot papers being sent out for the Conservative leadership election. The party said it had changed its plans for the vote after consulting with government intelligence and security. The intelligence organisation has warned hackers could change people's votes. The ballots were due to be sent out from Monday, but could now arrive as late as August the 11th. Meanwhile, a recent YouGov poll shows support for Rishi Sunak has dropped from 31% to 26%, while support for Liz Truss has increased. Speaking to GB News this morning, Conservative MP Brandon Lewis said he's backing Liz Truss.
There is only one poll that actually counts, and that's the poll of party members. The votes that party members like myself and others will cast over the next few days as those come out. Look, I don't know the details of obviously what's been happening in CCHQ, but I do think that it's their credit that they've made sure that we've got a process that is secure. We've got to make sure it is, and I think it's good that they've done that. The focus has got to be for us on giving people positive reasons to vote, to go out and vote for the next leader of the Conservative and Unionist Party. My argument is that should be Liz Truss.
Brandon Lewis there. Archie Battersby's parents have submitted an application to the European Court of Human Rights in a bid to postpone the withdrawal of his life support. The 12-year-old's treatment was due to end at 11 o'clock this morning unless his family submitted the application by 9 a.m. Bart's Health NHS Trust says it'll make no changes to his care until the legal issues are resolved. Archie was found unconscious at his home in April and was declared brainstem dead by doctors. Speaking outside the Royal London Hospital, Archie's mother said she will continue fighting.
If this country can't treat him, or they're not willing to treat him, where is the harm in allowing him to go to another country? I promised Arch, the same with his dad, that we'll fight till the bitter end, and that's exactly what we're going to do. We're going to fight for the right for my son to live.
Senior US politician Nancy Pelosi has left Taiwan following a controversial visit. The Speaker of the House of Representatives met with the country's president during the 24-hour trip, which has been strongly condemned by China. Earlier, Beijing said it will hold a series of live-fire military drills in the air and sea around the island from tomorrow. The country is self-ruled, but is seen as a breakaway province by China. In what is being seen as a showing of solidarity with the island, Ms. Pelosi said the US would not abandon the island. The first shipment carrying food out of Ukraine has anchored in the Black Sea off Turkey's coast. The ship, which is carrying around 26,000 tons of corn to Lebanon, departed Odessa's port on Monday. It's the first ship carrying food to leave the port of Odessa since the Russian invasion. In an exclusive interview with GB News, Tobias Ellwood, the chair of the Defence Select Committee, said the cost of living crisis in the UK is directly related to Ukraine.
The cost of living crisis that we're experiencing here is directly consequential to the fact that grain cannot get out of Odessa. That is ground zero when it comes to the breadbasket of Europe, Ukraine, being able to feed not just its own country, but Africa and indeed Europe as well. Get that grain moving, and then grain prices, food prices then drop. That affects the cost of living. You sort out Ukraine, oil and gas prices will lower as well.
Tobias Ellwood there. Southeast Water has become the latest supplier to announce a hosepipe ban following the driest July on record since 1935. The water supplier says it's restricting the use of sprinklers in the Kent and Sussex region from midnight on Friday the 12th of August until further notice. Southeast Water has said the demand for water this summer has broken all previous records. It follows Southern Water's hosepipe ban on Hampshire and the Isle of Wight from this Friday. Just Stop Oil protesters have been served with a national highways injunction which covers the M25 for blocking major roads. The Transport Secretary, Grant Shapps, tweeted the demonstrators could face a fine or imprisonment if they breach it, blocking roads again. He said, "We will not stand by while lives are put at risk and roads are ground to a halt." Most recently, the group climbed on signs on the M25 against what they called government's inadequate preparations for climate change. And the Premier League has announced clubs will no longer take the knee before every match. Instead, the gesture will now be used in what they're calling specific moments throughout the season in order to amplify the message that racism has no place in football or society. The gesture started in June 2020 in solidarity with the Black Lives Matter campaign. This is GB News. We'll bring you more news as it happens now. Let's return to On the Money.
So good afternoon. Coming up on the Money today, Liz Truss abandons a flagship policy to slash £8.8 billion from public sector pay outside London after furious warnings of levelling down. But with the rising cost of living and prices in the capital reaching record highs, could this be the answer for struggling city dwellers? We'll host a detailed discussion. Plus, BP reveal record profits of nearly £7 billion in their second quarter. It is the second highest figure in the company's history, with many cash-strapped UK households struggling to pay their bills. Should this even be allowed? Could we enforce a tougher windfall tax? More on this later. And UK nightclubs are facing closure amid rising energy bills, drink inflation and repercussions of long lockdowns, with 1 in 5 reported to close in the past 3 years. How can we save Britain's best loved clubs? Plus, each day on The Money features an in-depth Money Talks interview. Today, we're talking to the chief executive of a Newcastle-based financial services company called True Potential. He's got big views on levelling up and democratising our finance system. That's later in the show, so stay with us. This is GB News on TV, online and on digital radio. I'm Nana Akwer and you're on The Money. Now, the Tory leadership race is all getting a bit murky. From promises of tax cuts when inflation is under control, whenever that is, to accusations of fairy tale economics. The former Chancellor Rishi Sunak isn't doing himself any favours as he backtracks. The general public are asking, why didn't he do this when he was in charge of the purse strings? Liz Truss, on the other hand, appears to be offering way more, a definite, brilliant array of tax cuts, a way more palatable Conservative agenda. And it was all going so well. Some may say too well, until she made an immature comment about ignoring Nicola Sturgeon and joined the U-turn clan, changing her mind as quickly as she made it on civil servants' pay. You got a taste of how she managed to start off on the far left, then to the middle, then to the right, and from Remain to Brexit. She claimed they could save £8.8 billion by having salaries for government employees set by regional rather than national pay boards. This would be enforced with new contracts. However, within 48 hours, she'd done a complete about-turn, saying that she would no longer be following that policy. Most people with a vote care about taxes, not whether civil servants, many of whom are still working from home, get an income that reflects their environment. In my view, for new recruits, that makes perfect sense. Although, unfortunately, Truss's plan appears to suggest that doctors, teachers and policemen outside London would also be included. And now, of course, voting has been delayed due to a warning of cyber hacking. It all seems a bit Trump-esque. Forces at play suggest the candidates are closer than you think. I suspect the reality is somewhat different. Buyer's remorse firmly setting in as the new Conservative intake, who deposing Boris is now being pinned on, are considering whether getting rid of him was actually in their best interests. But we are where we are. What people hate more are candidates who flip-flop like the wind and cower to the loudest voices. Of this, they are both guilty. What happened to conviction politicians who know what they want and get their job done? But did Liz Truss actually have a point? So before we go to our panel, let's hear the latest from our reporter, Tom Harwood. He's our news and political correspondent. Tom, fill us in with what pledges that Liz Truss has gone back on and which ones actually remain, and whether you think she was misconstrued in any way.
Yes, the Liz Truss campaign put out a pretty speedy U-turn around midday yesterday. This, of course, was on the policy that was announced the night before, talking about regional pay boards. The confusion with the selling of this policy was that initially she was talking about civil servants, but the number, 8.8 billion, that was attached was about a conditional, if it was expanded to all public sector employees. Now, it's true that public sector employees in some regions of the United Kingdom are about 10 percentage points ahead in terms of their pay levels to equivalent private sector employees. So there is a strong Conservative argument that can be made for equalising those levels, so that if you're in the public sector, you're not way better paid off than if you're in the private sector, because, of course, there's the argument that crowds out private sector innovation and jobs, particularly in left-behind parts of the country. However, that argument got completely washed away with the discussion yesterday, and what we heard was the Labour Party, the Trade Union Congress, many journalists and indeed the Rishi Sunak campaign all saying that this would mean cutting the pay of nurses, teachers and doctors. Now, Liz Truss would say this would only apply to new contracts. It doesn't mean any pay cuts for people immediately, but the waters were muddied, and clearly the Liz Truss campaign thought the simplest, easiest thing to do was just withdraw the policy and try and pretend it never happened.
You see, that didn't look good, because she actually properly backtracked and said, well, what I meant was I didn't mean that. But I can hear what you're saying, because what she was really trying to get at was that she was trying to equalise the public sector pay with private sector pay, because actually it turns out public sector payers get paid more than the private sector.
In some parts of the country, yes, and this is why it was so politically difficult, because actually in places like London, the private sector wages are higher than public sector wages, whereas in other parts of the country it's different. So if you're talking about a levelling up agenda, it's very hard to justify that with saying actually the pay in London it should probably go up more than the pay elsewhere. That's a really hard political message to deliver, and so they decided to withdraw from it. Now, the Liz Truss campaign say, yes, OK, we've withdrawn this policy, that's one U-turn, but they put out a briefing note yesterday to journalists showing that Rishi Sunak, in their minds, has performed revealed 9 separate U-turns over the course of this leadership campaign. Everything from VAT to the level of tax to the Rwanda policy, to all sorts of different policies that he has either opposed in cabinet, opposed at the dispatch box, or even opposed at the start of this campaign, to then spin around and push forward now. And of course, the rounding off of yesterday was this new YouGov poll, which, if you exclude Don't Knows, puts it 70-30. 70 for Liz Truss, 30 for Rishi Sunak. That, to some extent, put a big exclamation mark on what was quite a dramatic day.
But that was before she did the U-turn, though. Tom, thank you very much. That's Tom Harwood. Well, let's see what my panel make of that. John Elliott, he's the founder and chairman of eBack, which designs and manufactures white goods, and Justin Urquhart Stewart, co-founder of Regionally. Well, let's start with you, John. Now, John, before Liz Truss U-turned, what did you make of her policy of re-evaluating the pay of public sector workers living in the poorer areas of Britain?
Well, first of all, government shouldn't set wages. Wages should be set between interaction between workers and employers. That's the way we need free markets, so the right wage is paid. If we underpay someone, they leave. So we've got to pay the right amount of pay to attract the right amount of people. And that's the best way to get a fair system, and the system that works well for the economy.
Some people, but actually, this is a normal thing anyway. And as was pointed out, they're simply equalising the pay in a sense. I mean, that was lost in translation. But is there really a problem with that?
No, there isn't really a free market, though, is there? There's not free movement of people. People who are underpaid leave and get a better job. But people who are overpaid stay there. And that's as big a problem as underpaying people. Because people who are overpaid means they're overqualified for the job, and the economy works less effectively. You've got to have a free market, people power, worker power, that determine the wages by their actions, not their words. And it shouldn't be government enforced. All government should do is make sure that an agreement is followed and there's no cheating. Employers can't get together to take wages down, and employees can't get together to take wages up. You've got to let a free market, people power, worker power, determine the right wage for every job.
They are civil servants, people might argue. Justin, people, especially in the south, can't afford to get onto the housing ladder. And should the government be sort of tampering around with that?
Well, it's easy for the government to try and tamper around with it. What it does do, though, it just destroys that one key word when you're trying to manage an economy: confidence. Actually either the government's got to come up with clear messages to what they're doing, and we're not getting clear messages, for instance, about the fuel issues coming this winter. Just lots of dribs and drabs and other elements which are coming through. We're in a period now where we've got rising interest rates, and of course we don't actually have a proper leader at the moment. So all of those elements just shake things up. Then you add to this a mixture as to what pay policy should be. When governments start getting involved in pay policies, particularly in the private sector, then life will get very difficult indeed. As John was just saying there, let them get on with it. It'll find a natural balance. What the government then has to do is to make sure then, in terms of fair pay throughout the country, you can have adjustments necessary for extra costs living in London, but these things can end up being terribly complicated.
But people would argue that they are civil servants, they're paid from the public purse.
Yeah.
And therefore, we want them to be paid as efficiently as possible. And even in the private sector, there is that sort of level where pay is equalised depending on the surroundings. So you're not going to get paid more than somebody in a similar job in a different company, even though it is the private sector. So why should it be that way in the public sector, especially when we, the public, are actually paying for it?
Yeah, I mean, what we should have is really a policy which is understandable and one which is actually seen as being fair, because it does cost more to actually live in London and in the big conurbations. Exactly. So that has to be reflected. Either that, or you're not going to get the right calibre and quality of people coming through. And that's one of the problems we've had, certainly in the civil service over the years. They've moved from the old-fashioned yes minister people who they'd been in the civil service for donkey's years and knew all not just about their particular area, but had a broad range of understanding. What you've now got is modern HR policies taken over by the civil service. So you spend 2 or 3 years in the Foreign Office, then you go to the Treasury, then you go somewhere else. So they're very bright people, but they're not experts in any of them. I remember 30 years ago dealing with the privatisations. The civil service knew exactly what they were doing. Now they come to you and say, I don't understand this, how does this work? We're losing that professionalism and that trust.
Well John, I'm going to come to you then now, because I know you wanted to chip in on that.
Yeah, well, I think, you see, because it's more expensive to live in London, then wages would be higher naturally, because they wouldn't take those jobs. The free market is the real way to do it, providing no one cheats. And that's the role of government, to make sure that it's a fair, free market. If it's more expensive to live somewhere, people will go to jobs that they need jobs at higher rates of pay, or they'll move out of that area. The market, let people deal with it their own way, not government trying to force rules on people.
But people would argue that it's not fair that somebody doing the same job as them, living somewhere, so for example in Newcastle, which is where I'm from, I'm a Geordie, why should somebody in Newcastle get exactly the same amount as somebody in London, knowing, well, we know full well that it's way more expensive to live in London. So it just makes sense that that's how it'd be. Otherwise you'll have people moving from Newcastle to London. You'll keep people in their sort of regions that way.
If you let the market sort that out, it would sort itself out. Because it's more expensive to live somewhere, or not as pleasant, people could then justify higher wages because they're competing with other people in the same area. If you have a free market and people compete for jobs, then it will level itself out. But you've got to leave it to the market, providing it's done fairly. That's the role of government, not setting pay limits and percentages.
I'm with you there, but we are paying for it. That's the only thing. So if the taxpayer's paying for it, then I think that the government owes it to us to be efficient.
Yeah, but we shouldn't set the salaries either. Let the market, let people power, let worker power set their wages. That's the best way. Not you or I determining it. People will determine it. People are resourceful. People will find the best job for them. And that's what we've got to allow to do, and that will make the economy stronger, and it's fairer.
Paid above the market rate, though. So on many cases, so some of those civil servants who've been paid by the public purse are getting more than people who are in the private sector. So surely it's fine for the government to do that to equalise the wages.
If you've got an open market, you see, other people could take those jobs. You see, if someone could do my job as well as me and for less money, he should be employed. He or her should be employed. Let the market determine. It'll level itself out. It's the fairest way. It's only because we've got so many restrictions in employment, because of artificial barriers in many cases, that we've got to get as free as possible. That's the best way to make a fair system that's very efficient.
OK, well, so do you agree to scrap the diversity and inclusion jobs then as well?
Well, diversity is another big issue, isn't it?
Waste of money.
You've got to let them choose. You know, the best way to choose things, I think one of the most effective organisations in the UK is supermarkets, because people vote with their feet. And that's the best way to get people to get things right. That's real democracy. You know, if you don't like Tesco, you go to Morrison's, and then Tesco up the game. The free market that's done fairly is the best way, the fairest way, and it's better for our economy.
And very, very briefly, John, because I'm running out of time, whose policies do you prefer then, Rishi's or Liz's?
I think Rishi really, but I think he maybe makes a good chance with the Exchequer, because I agree that the UK is in a bit of a poor state, actually, economically. We've got to accept that, and all of us have got to do a bit more work and consume a bit less. We consume more than we produce, we import more than we export, and we make up for it by borrowing money. We've got to change that. We need a radical change in our economic policy. We can do it, we can be much better.
Well, listen, it's really good to talk to you, John. Thank you so much for your views. That's John Elliott. He's from EBAC. And very briefly to you, Justin, then, whose policies do you prefer, Rishi's or Liz's?
I have to say their level of knowledge of economics is pitiful.
Really?
What I'm looking for in this, not that I've got a vote in it, is actually someone who's going to be an inspirational leader to actually build a team and move that forward. Neither of the candidates at the moment really give me that, I'm afraid.
All right, well, if you just joined me, welcome aboard. This is, of course, the GB News. We're live on TV, online and on digital radio. This is On the Money. I'm Nana Akwe. Now, after the break, we'll be digging into those rocketing energy prices as BP record their highest profits in 14 years. Stay with us. You're On the Money.
We are GB News.
We're right across this great nation.
On TV.
On radio.
On digital. Absolutely everywhere.
We don't talk down to you.
We embrace all voices with honest and civilised conversation.
We are not part of the establishment.
We're one of you.
And we're only getting started.
Join us on GB News,
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel. Hi there, it's Stephen and Anne.
At breakfast from 6 a.m, you'll always be caught up with everything you need to know, the latest headlines, opinions and debates.
We'll bring you the good news and the bad, but most of all, we're here for you.
Remember, send in your views and let us know what you would like us to talk about.
That's because we're your news channel. And every morning at 6 a.m, it's breakfast on GB News.
My name's Tom Harwood, and join me 9:30 a.m. every weekday for The Briefing, your one-stop shop for everything you need to know about what's going on in politics today.
I wonder if this is a deal that might need to be like the biscuits in this factory, twice baked.
Is there not an opportunity here to win out against the extremes?
Tom Harwood, GBNews.
What are you going to do about it?
Things should have been done differently, and they certainly are being done differently.
Don't miss it. The Briefing with me, Tom Harwood, 9:30 Monday to Friday on GB News.
Where would you like to go?
Just take me to the studio, please, mate. You know where you're going. I've got a show to do. Friday Night Feast on GB News, 7 p.m. And it's like nothing you've ever seen before. We take a different angle on the week's biggest news stories. The viewers and listeners set me some absolutely mad challenges to do. We tried to rehome a rescue dog. And yes, there's some other wacky stuff in there as well. I feel like I could take on the world. Well, that's that. Friday Night Feast with me, Patrick Christie's, every Friday, 7 till 9 p.m. on GB News. Be there.
Is this coming up to 23 minutes after 1 o'clock? This is GB News. We're live on TV, online and on digital radio. I'm Nana Akwe. This is On the Money. Now, just yesterday, BP announced its biggest quarterly profits for 14 years, coming at a time when customers face news that household energy bills could soar to almost £4,000 a year this winter, and inflation hitting 40-year high records. Now, the energy giant saw underlying profits that hit £6.9 billion, more than triple the amount it made at the same time last year. And just last week, competitor Shell also announced bumper profits of nearly £10 billion. So whilst many of us are calling on the government to introduce a tougher windfall tax on oil and gas firm profits, others have a differing view, pointing out that firms pay billions in tax already and help our pension funds stay solvent. Joining us now is Christina Rabakaiti, an energy expert and CEO of PPAYA. Is it PAYA, the renewable energy firm? Wow. And I'm also still with Justin Urquhart-Stewart. He's the co-founder of Originally. All right, so I'm going to start with you, Justin. Should there be a tougher windfall tax on energy firms? A lot of people are calling for it, saying it's not fair.
Yeah, it's an easy thing to try and say, because they have companies that have actually suddenly made a lot of cash, not because they were very good at it, it's just the price changed, and they've been sitting on a lot of the stuff. No, what you need to think about, actually, is what are those companies going to be doing for us? How much are they earning money out of the UK and therefore investing back into the UK? Companies which go in cycles, because BP was running into huge losses a little while back, and you need these companies to be investing in the country. So it's not just a matter of the windfall tax, that's the good popular stuff. It's how much of that money is going to be reinvested back into Britain. And as you mentioned as well, a lot of that money, these companies, are in our pensions. So, in your pensions, you're going to have Shell, BP, Centrica, all to be there. You want them to be profitable. They're providing a yield going in there, and that is a key benefit. So windfall tax is a nice, easy thing to come out with. We're going to smack those smart people on the head because we're going to get an extra bit out of them. That's not the idea to try and do that. Help get the companies that are profitable, paying a fair due, making sure they're investing into Britain. If they're just making extra money out of it and pocketing it themselves in higher bonuses coming through, that's the wrong thing to do.
But what about Ofgem then? Because you would think that if they are setting energy price caps, how come these people are allowed to charge such high prices and we, the consumer, are paying for them? I thought we had something that would guarantee that this would not be the case.
It has been quite astonishing. Most of our regulators, should be Ofgem, should be off-sod. They achieve remarkably little. If you go back to, say, the water companies, when they were privatised, and the big issue for them is they were going to replace all those Victorian pipes which are disappearing. What do I see now on the streets? We're reinvesting to make sure we change, to get the pipelines up to the right standard and get rid of the Victorian. We were supposed to have done that 20 years ago. Where was the regulator checking?
When you've just said that, though, that's exactly the point, though, because you said they should have done it 20 years ago. How can we be sure that these energy companies are actually reinvesting so that we're not in the same place 20 years' time? Which
is why you go back to the likes of Ofgem, make sure not only they've got a new set of teeth in, but someone's sharpened them as well. That's why you have a regulator, to make sure it's fair and open. And yet we've seen this market destroyed by the stupidity of Ofgem, allowing newcomers coming in who didn't know how to run it, how to hedge prices, and found themselves weak businesses that were going to suffer heavily as soon as the market gets disrupted, which is, of course, what we saw. We knew this was going to happen. and yet somehow we manage to just ignore it. It'll all go away. It won't.
Well, a lot of people are saying renewables are the future. So, Christina, what do you think the government can do then to improve the energy self-sufficiency? I mean, renewable energy, everyone's going on about it, but it doesn't look particularly efficient and doesn't really... a lot of it you can't store.
I've got a couple of things to say to the discussion that you just had regarding the general profits that are being made. I think my opinion is that if abnormal profits are being made because of fuel costs going up, I think we should be a bit tougher on the windfall tax. But it doesn't mean that we should only tax oil. In fact, gas is not making any additional profits because gas prices have gone up. So oil and other technologies that are making additional profits, I don't. Do we trust them to reinvest into the right things? I don't. Shell's CEO, BP CEO are saying, "Oh, we're putting this much money into renewables and innovation," but really they spend more money lobbying for oil and gas in the US than they do in the markets at home. So, do we trust the government to put the money in the right place? I'm not sure either, but the only way to guarantee that we reduce the bills short term is maybe we could ring fence the windfall tax and make sure that the cash that was meant to be spent to reduce bills and help everybody in the country is being spent on the right in the right places.
But Christina, there's one very important word that you used there, short term. And that's the thing. If you windfall tax people, they will keep the prices high and you'll be doing that forever. So this is not a way, from what I can see, that we'll get them to bring those prices down in that manner. And we will be constantly windfall taxing them and the prices will constantly continue to rise.
Absolutely. And I think don't forget that windfall tax, if we, let's say, charge 20 or 30%, they're still making another 80% of additional profits that they wouldn't have made a year before. So that's still a lot to reinvest in other things that they want to spend on. But longer term, you're completely right. We have to continue to build, renewables, because that's one of the cheap powers that will help bills long term. And also one of the key things that we don't talk enough about is the gas storage. Where we're not going to turn off gas anytime soon. It's got another 10 or 15 years at least to support us through this crisis. We, at the moment, the problem is that we've got cheap gas coming into the country and we've got no way of storing it, which means that it travels into Europe and then we import it rather. We import it back in at much higher prices than we would have stored them at. So it's, I think that is one of the quick ways. So if we bring Rough, which is our old gas storage facility, that will have immediate longer term savings for the bill payers.
Yeah, but a lot of people saying renewables, whilst it sounds like a nice idea, will actually end up being extremely expensive. Most people can't afford solar panels. Heat pumps, which are supposed to be efficient, will be extremely expensive to run. In fact, from what I've looked at, it turns out that they'll probably be just as expensive as we reach a high price. That will be the price that we'll be paying. So we'll get preparing ourselves for paying those sort of prices. And a lot of the renewables just simply aren't up to scratch and won't work and won't really cover the shortfall.
Oh gosh, you're absolutely right. Renewables will absolutely not get us there on their own. Solar only generates in the day. Wind is absolutely unpredictable. Thank God we've got lithium ion now kicking off grid scale. That will be great support. Hydrogen for bigger industries and maybe trains to replace oil and other fuel that we're using. So we have to have a mixture of various different technologies to both guarantee the security and keep the prices long term. But I think as we guarantee the security, the prices naturally will stabilize, because at the moment the problem is the volatility, and that's what's causing that freak out in the market that's just making the prices rise higher and higher.
Well, Christina, thank you very much for joining me. That's Christina Rabakaite. She's an energy expert and CEO of Paya. Great to talk to her. Still with me is Justin Urquhart-Stewart. Thank you so much to my guests. Up next, we find out how nightlife in the UK is under threat as news stats show that 1 in 5 clubs has shut down. This is On the Money with me. I'm Nana Akweer. First, let's get an update from the GB Newsroom.
Hello, I'm Simon Pusey. It's just gone 1:31. Fears over security have delayed ballot papers being sent out for the Conservative leadership election. The party said it had changed its plans for the vote after consulting with government intelligence and security. The intelligence organisation has warned hackers could change people's votes. The ballots were due to be sent out from Monday, but could now arrive as late as August the 11th. Archie Battersby's parents have submitted an application to the European Court of Human Rights in a bid to postpone the withdrawal of his life support. The 12-year-old's treatment was due to end at 11 o'clock this morning unless his family submitted the application by 9 a.m. Archie was found unconscious at his home in April and was declared brain stem dead by doctors. Speaking earlier outside the Royal London Hospital, Archie's mother said she will continue fighting. Inflation could hit 15% next year as the cost of living crisis continues. The Resolution Foundation is warning the outlook for inflation is highly uncertain and the Bank of England is likely to forecast a higher and later peak. The Bank of England is expected to increase interest rates by 0.5 percentage point tomorrow, the biggest increase since 1995. Senior US politician Nancy Pelosi has left Taiwan following a controversial visit. The Speaker of the House of Representatives met with the country's president during the 24-hour trip, which has been strongly condemned by China. Earlier, Beijing said it will hold a series of live-fire military drills in the air and sea around the island from tomorrow. Just Stop Oil protesters have been served with a National Highways injunction which covers the M25 for blocking major roads. The Transport Secretary Grant Shapps tweeted the demonstrators could face a fine or imprisonment if they breach it by blocking roads again. He said, "We will not stand by while lives are put at risk and roads are ground to a halt." TV, online and DAB+ radio, this is GB News.
Direct Bullion sponsors the Finance Report on GB News for gold and silver investment.
Here's a quick snapshot of today's markets. The pound is 1.218 to the dollar. The pound is 1.196 to the euro. And the price of gold currently stands at £1,448, 6 pence per ounce.
Direct Bullion sponsors the Finance Report on GB News for real-time investment.
We are GB News.
We're right across this great nation.
On TV.
On radio.
On digital. Absolutely everywhere.
We don't talk down to you. We embrace all voices with honest and civilised conversation.
We are not part of the establishment.
We're one of you.
And we're only getting started.
Join us on GB News,
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel. Hi there, it's Stephen and Anne.
At breakfast from 6 a.m, you'll always be caught up with everything you need to know, the latest headlines, opinions and debates.
We'll bring you the good news and the bad, but most of all, we're here for you.
Remember, send in your views and let us know what you would like us to talk about.
That's because we're your news channel. And every morning at 6 a.m, it's breakfast on GB News.
My name's Tom Harwood and join me 9:30 a.m. every weekday for The Briefing, your one-stop shop for everything you need to know about what's going on in politics today. I wonder if this is a deal that might need to be like the biscuits in this factory, twice baked.
Is there not an opportunity here to win out against the extremes?
Tom Harwood, GB News.
What are you going to do about it?
Things should have been done differently, and they certainly are being done differently.
Don't miss it. The Briefing with me, Tom Harwood, 9:30 Monday to Friday on GB News.
Where would you like to go?
Just take me to the studio, please, Matt. You know where you're going. I've got a show to do. Friday Night Feast on GB News, 7 p.m. And it's like nothing you've ever seen before. We take a different angle on the week's biggest news stories. The viewers and listeners set me some absolutely mad challenges to do. We tried to rehome a rescue dog. And yes, there's some other wacky stuff in there as well. I feel like I could take on the world. Well, that's that. Friday Night Feast with me, Patrick Christie's, every Friday, 7 till 9 p.m. on GB News. Be there.
Good afternoon. It's just coming up to 37 minutes after 1 o'clock. This is GB News on TV, online and on digital radio. This is On the Money. I'm Nana Acquare. Now, it's safe to say we definitely have some of the best cities in the world to go out drinking and partying in. And it's hardly a surprise that the UK nightclubs have so much to offer. I can remember in my youth, actually, my first job was at a radio station at Kiss 100, and I was in charge of Kiss Club's sponsorship. It was fabulous. We usually have endless amounts of rain and long winters in this country, but new figures show that 1 in 5 nightclubs have shut down over the last 3 years, and lockdowns and, of course, inflation have been partly to blame. Now, with only 1,130 clubs left across the whole of the United Kingdom, many club owners feeling that they were the last of the government's concerns during COVID, and now they have to tackle the current economic climate too. It's no wonder that so many are left without a choice but to close down. And many more and more Gen Zs giving up smoking and pouring away alcohol and stuff. They don't even drink this lot. They're like wallflowers. No, but obviously, no, they're very health conscious. It's good. And things like that, making things getting from bad to worse for the industry. So I'm joined now by Michael Kill. He's the CEO of the Nighttime Industries Association, and my regular economist also joining me, Justin Urquhart-Stewart. Right, so let me see, Michael. It's been tough for nightclubs, it really has. Do you know how many clubs have shut down since the start of the pandemic? Because obviously there's only just over 1,000 left, but how many since the start?
There's been about 300. We started with about 1,446 in 2019. We're down to 1,130. To be honest, trade is actually looking really good for the businesses that are still open and have managed to sustain this last 2.5 years, which have been really challenging. But as you can appreciate, the next 6 months are going to be critical. Cost inflation is really challenging, and we've got staff challenges as well in terms of shortages, both security, talent pipeline is limited. So, look, for us, I mean, it's positive in terms of trade, and trade is up about 9%, but we have lost so many. We really need to start trying to protect some of these really, really important venues. And we have to understand they're a British institution. It's something that is renowned worldwide. Our club networks, you know, from Fabric, Ministry of Sound, Lab 11, Birmingham to Sub Club in Glasgow. They're so important to people's sort of mental, physical and social well-being.
Do you think partly it's this Gen Z, they're very goody two-shoes, this lot, they don't want to do anything. Now we're all coming back, or are you finding that because of the pandemic, people are really coming out there now and just having a good time because it's something they haven't been able to do for a while?
I think without a doubt, we're seeing a volume of people coming out. As you can understand, cost inflation is somewhat tempered that because people have got less disposable income. So we're looking at sort of frequencies sort of dropping and dwell times dropping within venues. But, you know, we're really keen to sort of start driving forward one of these, you know, these important spaces. And we've worked very hard during the pandemic to make sure that as many of them can get through the last 2.5 years, bearing in mind that they were the first to close and the last to open. So we need as much support as possible moving forward. And we see schemes like Berlin where they protect these businesses, almost treat them like museums in terms of heritage assets. So we need to start really working with government and trying to protect some of these key businesses and these locations that are vital to the British sort of counterculture, which is huge globally.
Well, are the government doing anything to try and protect them? As you said, I mean, they're an icon in this country. You know, we're well known for things like Ministry of Sound. Is there much coming from, in terms of assistance from the government?
We're working hard with many of the government departments looking at protections like agent of change. We're looking at heritage asset protection schemes, but we're also looking at deregulation and licensing and planning easements to allow for these businesses to flourish and extend their trade. Some of the challenges that we've had, which we've seen in places like Watford and where we've seen landlords foreclose in break clauses and close down amazing, huge spaces, 3,000 capacity businesses because they want to turn them into residential spaces. So we've got to protect these businesses against that because they are very, very vulnerable to it. And there's some work that needs to be done there. And we're hoping a new government coming through will really start to understand the importance that they play in culture as part of the cultural tapestry across the UK.
I'm afraid it's the same government, just different. The deck chairs have moved. Let's bring in Justin Urquhart-Stewart on this one. Look, the nighttime economy, exactly as he said. I mean, this is the lifeblood, and literally a third of these clubs are shut down in such a short space of time. What kind of contribution do they bring to the economy in this country?
Well, absolutely vital, because what it does bring more people into towns. It's all very easy to say during lockdown, people were stuck at home, but you don't want them stuck at home. You need them coming into town. So how do you revitalise regional towns? And that is through daytime and nighttime entertainment, shopping, and all those elements. So, for instance, people quite rightly have a go at British High Street and say they're dull. They are extremely dull. You've got virtually the same shops. So what you can do is local planners can make sure you encourage different types of people to come in here, pop-up shops, other elements, other forms of entertainment, and then the same applies to the night economy as well. It's vibrant, it's exciting, and again, you want people coming out at night, not just having deserted cities. So what you don't want is government money into it. What you want is tax breaks so that there's more investment going in to actually give people some support in terms of making sure it's worth their while getting returns. So whether it's capital investment, where there's the ability to hold on into that investment over a longer period of time, not just taking a punt and then selling it on again. So the various ways they can help with the structure. They don't need to be given money, just make the economy more corporate efficient, corporate positive.
In terms of cash, though, like in terms of billions contributing to the economy, what sort of gives us a rough figure on that?
I'm no expert on nighttime one at all, but you would have seen, I would have thought, so we were just hearing how much it's dropped off. But you're talking about £1 billion part of the economy over this. So, it's never going to be the same as daytime, but where is the success? And you just mentioned about Berlin. That's a key element to Berlin, the nightlife there. It's part of the artistic base of the country. And so let's have a look at that. We've got a great artistic base in our centres.
So it's the footfall in particular which drives traffic to the businesses around it. Michael, do you have a rough figure on how much the nighttime economy contributes to the overall economy in this country?
Well, it's 112 billion pound turnover. So, as you can appreciate, that's a huge proportion of the British economy. 1.94 million people, predominantly under 30, employed. But I think just to add to exactly what's been said there, bear in mind that these venues, they are really important, as we said, to their social, physical and mental well-being. They add in terms of secondary and tertiary purchase. People come and stay in accommodation. They go to fashion to dress up. People choose towns and cities to study in because they have a great nightlife, as well as businesses now, because of things like fintech companies that
We've just lost. Anyway, we're coming to the end of that. Michael, thank you very much for that. That is Michael Kill. He's the CEO of the Nighttime Industries. Right, if you just joined me, welcome. This is GB News. We're live on TV, online and on digital radio. I'm Nana Akweer. Now, the first shipment of grain out of Ukraine arrived in Turkey this morning. All exports were stopped when the Ukraine war began. Now, Ukrainian President Zelensky welcomed the news, stating that the goal now must be regularity with boats leaving every day. Now, the ship is carrying 26,000 tonnes worth of grain, and it is hoped that these exports restarting, it will ease the global food crisis. But this will take some time. Now, the impact of no grain is already being felt on our high streets. Ukraine is one of the largest wheat-producing nations, and much of that wheat goes into our food products. Our East of England reporter Ed Crawford is with a baker who's struggling with the price of his ingredients. Ed.
Hi, yes, I am in Suffolk at a bakery. Now, the war in Ukraine, in the Donbass, Lugansk and Crimea might seem quite far away from the British high street, but Ukraine is a large wheat-producing nation. It produces around 10% of the world's wheat, and that will have a slight effect on the global wheat price. So I've come to this bakery, Palmer's Bakery, which is 153 years old today, and I've come to speak to Kieran, the master baker. Kieran, can you tell me, what are you seeing in terms of grain prices?
We've seen the flour prices go up twice this year, and we believe they're going to go up again in September. So it's really, I think it's a global effect, having a knock-on effect in this country.
And are you seeing other ingredients going up as well as wheat, or is wheat the big one?
Across the board, really. Sultanas, sugars, fats. I mean, butter went up by nearly £15 a box last week. As you say, wherever you go in the world, it's happening, but here, it's just a knock-on effect. Yeah. And we all have to get on with it.
Well, it's very difficult, and it seems that whilst people are getting on with it, they are having to shoulder some of the financial burden. And obviously, we've got the war in Ukraine, that's a physical war. We've got the sanctions on Russia, which in turn is driving up fertiliser prices, making UK wheat even more expensive. What else do you think is the future for bakeries in the UK?
Hopefully, people will realise to shop locally and for traditional goods will be the way to go. But as you say, prices are going up and people have to realise that food is an essential thing and prices have to rise accordingly. It's not something you can do without.
Several bakers I've spoke to have said two things to me. They've said that larger supermarkets are closing their bakeries and people are going to have to start shopping at more artisan bakeries. Also, a lot of bakers have said to me that we're really going to see the grain price rises around September when the harvest comes in. Can you tell me about that? Have you heard much about what's coming in September?
We've been told it's going to rise in September, but we haven't been told how much. We'll just have to wait and see what comes through the post.
Well, it's difficult to tell what the future holds, but thankfully the Ukrainian grain shipment is back on board. It's all ships ahead, as it were, and hopefully things can return back to normal and there will be some global stability to come. Back to you, Nana.
Well, thank you so much. Thank you so much. That's our reporter there. Thank you so much for that. That is our reporter reporting on things going on here. Right now, time for On the Money, our daily interview series, Money Talks. And today I'm joined by Daniel Harrison. He's the Chief Executive of True Potential, a financial services firm based in Newcastle upon Tyne, my birthplace. Completely family-run, True Potential was founded in 2007 by 5 senior partners who all mortgaged their homes to action their dreams, a fast-growing wealth management and investment technology provider. It reported its success in their growing profits by 80% to £132 million by their 15th consecutive year of growth. As one of the largest firms heralding from the North East, True Potential employs and celebrates local talent and is a strong believer in levelling up. And here in the studio, Daniel Harrison, On the Money's latest guest on Money Talks. Right, so, well, we've got loads going on. So, very exciting. I'm pleased to say that Daniel joins me in the studio. Daniel, thank you so much for coming in.
Thank you for inviting me.
So, you're here from my birthplace, Newcastle upon Tyne.
Hello, Jodie.
Hello, Jodie. Well, yeah, it's good to meet you. I'm not great at the accent, unfortunately. I moved to Essex when I was 4.
No, you never lose the Geordie accent.
It's true, but I'm a true Geordie. Now, True Potential, usually when people go into business, the most important thing is actually, in my view, to take risk. Yes. Then you're serious. Because if you watch it on things like Dragon's Den and stuff where they go, oh, well, I didn't put any of my own money in, that's always a bit of a, an alarm bell. Yeah. So for you setting up this business with your family, talk to me about how you came to come up with the concept of doing this and what you were kind of doing before.
The whole concept, I think you're absolutely right about taking a risk. I think you have to have your own capital. You've got to have your own skin in the game. Someone much wiser than me has said before, and that's something which me and my other 4 fellow senior partners did.
Yeah.
We all left reasonably well-paid jobs for large organisations, took the risk, and that's because we believed that actually there was a yearning need in the UK financial services space to provide something better for clients, something which empowers them, something which makes them feel happy about investing, something which actually gives them financial freedom in the end. And there's no better way of taking a risk than putting your own money in, putting the house up for a mortgage, telling those at home, we're all in here.
It better work, otherwise you've got nowhere to live.
Yeah, absolutely.
So you put your homes on the line for this one. And what is the concept of True Potential? Is it, so someone like me, an external investor, could put in, say, loads of, I've got some old pensions from this, that and the other. I could consolidate them, go to you, you could invest them in some form of bond or some sort of managed fund. What's the deal? How does it work?
I think you could call us, if you want to use industry parlance, we'd be called wealth tech, but that's industry jargon. Simply put, I think you described it really well. We're dealing with members of the public who have investments, have pensions, or want to invest or want to save for retirement. And we use a vertically integrated technology platform to bring all of the clients' money into one place. We give them advice on what's the right tax structure. We help them set a goal for the medium and for the long term. And then we use our market-leading technology to allow a client at a tap of an app or logging in their website to see how exactly well they're doing and to talk to us where they need more help, more guidance.
It's pretty really efficient. I called them earlier today, actually, as it goes.
Did you?
I did, actually.
And they answered?
Well, they did. She was very helpful. She explained all the GIAs and the ISAs, and you've got... so are you dealing mainly in stocks and shares, or are you dealing with cash? Because some people might think, well, because I mean, we're talking about ISAs, is it a stocks and shares ISA? What's the difference with some of the things that you're...
It's a range. So we have the portfolios of where the money's invested, and, even Justin, who you had just on there before, we work with his previous firm, 7IM, and a range of other fund managers where we manage £22 billion of clients' money in stocks and shares ISAs, into pensions, into general investment accounts, and into bonds as well. The different tax wrappers really depend on what type of client they are, what their goals are, and what their individual circumstances.
And I know that you're not only you're quite philanthropic in that you look at the community as well around, and you work with some of the young people as well to teach them about actual money, because we all learn to add up, but we don't kind of learn mortgages and all that kind of stuff.
I think this is a really important thing. It's about financial literacy going back to school. And I think about myself in school. I only learned to budget. I only learned to invest because my mum and dad told me it was the right thing to do, and you speak to peers at work, but not everybody has that opportunity. Not everybody has those kind of mentors, so to speak. So we believe in putting our money where our mouth is. We think that's a duty of private organisations as well, to effectively help their communities level up. So we invested £400,000 last year, for instance, into initiatives such as the Beacon of Light at Sunderland, into programmes with the Open University for finance programmes, and that's all about teaching people skills, giving people confidence, also teaching people to work and the benefit of working from there as well. So those local initiatives really help people, I think, give everybody a chance to work and to feel like they're going to contribute.
There's a lot of people are sort of slightly put off with the idea because it seems too complicated, and they don't understand that actually there are more ways of sort of investing and building your capital than just having it in the bank or just having an ISA. There are other things that people
There's
can do.
many things to do, but it's that confidence, it's education, it's a minefield. You type in Google where to invest my money, and what a set of searches that is. What I'd always recommend to anybody, though, is just start small. It doesn't matter where you start, it doesn't matter how you start, but just start small, get the confidence, get the understanding, or speak to organisations like us. It's our duty to help. It's our duty to empower people and hopefully make them feel in control. I always think there's no better freedom out there than having your own money, be it in the present day, or certainly as we move people towards retirement as well.
And how did you take your business from just being an average business to where it is now? Because that is some feat.
We stuck at it. So when we formed the business in 2007, this shows what do we know in the industry, that we had the 2008 financial crisis as well.
Yes, I remember that.
What a time to start a financial services business. But going back to at the beginning, we were all in, we had no options. So we've always had a vision, which is if we put the end investor right at the heart of our thinking and do right by them, we know we'll win. So we've just always kept that in mind. And every day we've got up, we've worked at it, we've kind of spread the message to as many people as possible.
How do people know that if they put their money in your business, that you'll still be around in a couple of years' time or whatever? Because obviously it's a long-term vision.
It is.
What guarantees, what checks and balances have you got in place to make sure that if you do go belly up, they're protected?
Yeah, we have the normal government protection with FSCS levy and the protection there, but also behind the scenes with the regulations, something the FCA do in terms of custodian services, in terms of the protection there. There's a lot of belt and braces checks there to make sure that we run the business in a not just a coherent fashion, but in a very solvent fashion.
So, and I think you've probably still got your houses, but you've probably got bigger houses now.
Well, the mortgage is paid off again. Luckily, we've done well for our clients, we've done well for our advisors, but obviously as business people, we've done well for ourselves as shareholders as well. So everybody wins, which is the right way to run a business, I think.
Well, fabulous to talk to you. I mean, it really is impressive that what you've done there. If people want to find out more, just tell them where they can go to find out.
They can go to tpllp.com.
Well, listen, it's really good to talk to you, Daniel. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much for inviting me. Thank
really
you.
good to talk to you. That's Daniel Harrison. He's from True Potential, a way that you can invest your money and make more money. Fabulous. Sounds great. I'm going to give it a go myself. I might as well. Got nothing to lose. Listen, remember, you can always catch up on everything that we have here on GB News. You can go online and check us out on YouTube, or why not download the GB News app, where you can find out all of the different shows that are happening here. Now, my normal home place is actually on Friday, Saturday and Sunday between 4 4 and 6. I'm on holiday for the first time ever, but you can catch up with my show then. There's so much more still to come. That's all I've got time for today. But don't forget to join us again tomorrow at 1 o'clock, where Mark Longhurst will be sitting in the hot seat. This is me, GB News. I'm Nana Akwe, and that was, of course, On the Money. I'll see you in a couple of weeks' time after I've done nothing, just hung around my house for a couple of weeks. Enjoy. See you soon.
Hello, Alex Deakin here with your latest weather updates. A messy picture out there today. Some sunshine, quite a lot of cloud, a few showers. It is turning cooler, but it is going to be another very warm and humid day across East Anglia and the southeast. That's where the warmth persists. Elsewhere, we've got this weather front slowly sinking southwards, introducing cooler and fresher air, but also introducing quite a lot of cloud in this zone from the Wash down towards Dorset, Hampshire, seeing a few showers that'll edge towards Norfolk and Cambridgeshire. Further north, we've got some showers drifting in as well, hit and miss affairs. There'll be some breaks in the clouds, some sunny spells across parts of northern England and parts of southwest England too. And across the southeast, with the warm air here, if we see some sunshine, could get up to 28, 29 Celsius, and still pretty warm and humid generally across England and Wales. But we're going to see more cloud thickening across Northern Ireland this evening, some heavy bursts of rain here, and eastern parts of Scotland seeing some heavy rain as we go towards midnight. Overnight, we'll see a few more showers drifting into northwest England, but further south it does stay dry. It won't be as warm and humid as recent nights, but still temperatures in towns and cities staying in the mid-teens across the southeast. On to Thursday, and across the northern half of the country, it's a case of sunny spells and showers. Further south, well, if you're after rain, I don't think we're going to see much at all. Not many showers getting in here. It stays dry, fine and sunny. And even further north, the showers tending to fade, except across the far north of Scotland, where temperatures will still be in the mid-teens at best. Further south, it will be fresher, less humid. Temperatures closer to average, low to mid-20s. During Thursday evening, still a few showers across northern Scotland, some for Northern Ireland, but otherwise most places